Welcome to Coyote's Corner. This episode, we'll be listening to John Sanders tell an original tale, The Pheasant's Love Story.
Once upon a summertime, a young female pheasant cautiously stepped out of a bush, looking all around. And suddenly she smelled something strange and exotic. It was the alluring fragrance of motor oil and exhaust. She was a beautiful young pheasant, with golden brown speckles cascading down her back, and her name was Chick. That morning she was out on an adventure. She was looking for love in all the wrong places. She was looking for a man, but not just any man, no. She'd had it with all those male pheasants she'd ever met. They were too showy, too proud, too cocksure of themselves. They were just a bunch of pretty boy pantywaists. No, what she needed was a real man. And then she heard him. It was a deep, deep, purring rumble that sent a thrill through her body, deep down in the depths of her soul. A feeling like nothing she'd ever felt before. Oh, it was love at first sound. She hurried toward the sound, hopping up onto a stone wall at the edge of the woods, and then she saw him. He was slowly rumbling up a dirt track at the edge of the hayfield, and he was coming toward her. Oh, my God, he was the most beautiful, unearthly green she had ever seen. She jumped down off the wall and into the dirt track, right in the path of this gorgeous hunk of a tractor. The tractor stopped with a surprised look on its face, and they just stood there looking at each other in wonder. Oh, he was so huge, and he kept making that deep, rumbling, sexy purring that told her how much he loved her. Bobbing up and down in a mating dance of love, she tried to explain how deeply he thrilled her, right down to her tippy-toe claws. Oh, she wished she had a sweeter singing voice, so she could sing him a love song. But all that came out was creak, 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 like a squeaky door. The tractor's name was John Deere. He was small as tractors go, but he was still growing. And he was strong, so strong, much stronger than he looked. And he was proud of that strength, proud of his giant rear wheels and his mighty engine, an engine that he always kept well oiled and purring. He was strong enough to pull the heaviest loads out of the worst sucking mud holes. But, like a lot of those with very, very great strength, John Deere was also very, very gentle. A gentle soul with a tender heart. And when he saw that beautiful pheasant step out in front of him, he stopped, awestruck. Immediately his heart went out to this maiden who was describing her love to him so eloquently. They talked for the longest time. He, love-struck and idling there, purring his basso profundo love song. And she, dancing her heart out, bobbing up and down, bowing and praying to this godlike beast of a man. And then suddenly, she turned and ran back into the woods. She just had to tell everyone about her newfound love for this gorgeous, thrilling man. But when she told her family and friends, they were not happy for her. No, they were angry. They didn't understand. They kept yelling at her.
"He's not one of us. A love like that will never work. It's unnatural. That sort of foul greaseball will dash your hopes and leave you broken-hearted. Stick to your own kind. Stick to your own kind.
Oh, they just didn't understand. She asked her parents to come and meet him, but they absolutely refused. No, they didn't understand. They would never understand. So, every day she would secretly sneak away from the family nesting place, searching for her love. She would listen until she heard his beautiful basso love song. And someday she would find him and rush to him so that she could renew her vows of love. Those were wonderful days. But there were other days when he was nowhere to be found. Days when she couldn't hear him anywhere. Had he abandoned her? Had he forgotten her? On those days when she couldn't find him, she would keep searching in wider and wider circles, listening for his rumbling love song. On some of these searches, she would be drawn to the purring of other beasts, having different squarer shapes and darker colors, but still having that manly aroma of motor oil and exhaust, and still singing a similar deep, rumbling, sexy love song. And whenever she found one of these new hunks, she would jump in front of it, dancing her mating dance, bobbing up and down and professing her love. When her family found out about these other affairs, they berated her for becoming a fallen pheasant. Her father even called her a horrible, shameful name, a name I can't repeat here. But she didn't care anymore. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't stop. She had to find that love which was like no other. So she kept going out day after day, looking for her lost love, that love which had thrilled her so deeply. Until one day, when she came to the edge of the woods by the side of a wide black road on a hill, and heard the most gorgeous, deep rumbling she had ever heard. It was coming toward her. She stepped out onto the road in front of it and looked up, and up, and up, at an enormous dump truck barreling down the hill toward her, coming so fast, so fast. Thus ends the tragic tale of a pheasant that fell in love with a tractor. And let this be a lesson to all you young pheasants. A relationship like that always, always, always ends badly. The end.
That was John Sanders telling the pheasant's love story. Michael Lang sat down with John to get some background on that story and see where it came from. We'll listen to that interview now.
Well, thank you, John, for coming here to Coyote's Corner and sharing that story with us.
My pleasure.
That's an original story that you wrote. Where did this story come from? What was the inspiration?
It's actually a true story. I met that pheasant, a pheasant named Chick, that fell in love with a tractor and transferred its love to every other motor vehicle that it came across. And the story began about 1.5 years ago when I was taking a storytelling retreat and workshop. And part of what happened there was one of the leaders, Geraldine Brooks, showed us some pictures that were intriguing and were meant to spark your imagination for some story. And one of these pictures was a picture of a rooster on top of a split rail fence holding the Wall Street Journal in its beak. And that reminded me of this pheasant named Chick that had fallen in love with a tractor. Just the oddity of it, how can an animal, a bird like that, do something seemingly so unnatural.
Right.
So I started telling the story from the pheasant's point of view, and the pheasant that I had known was a male, but I decided this really had to be a female, so I changed her into a female, a pheasant hen, and then we mixed in a little bit of Romeo and Juliet and some West Side Story there, just to make it interesting. And I just had a lot of fun writing it and letting my imagination fly loose with that. And when I told it during the first version of it, during the workshop, I got a really big response. The other people there just loved it. In fact, they still ask for it whenever I see them again. So I wrote it and then polished it up some more. And as I practiced telling it, preparing to tell it to an audience, I kept changing it. So I would come across phrases that had just appeared wonderful in my mind, or wonderful ideas that were actually side trips that weren't doing anything. And I just changed things until things came out right, or those wonderful, clever phrases that just wouldn't fit in my mouth, and then I'd smooth them out and turn them into something that was sayable. And then the more I practiced it, the more I changed it. And in fact, I still, when I go back and get ready to tell it, even though I've told it several times already, I still keep saying, I want to play around with it. How about if we try and change this phrase? Or what if we do this? So some of those decisions are still floating, and I let them... I let my decision about just exactly how I'm going to say it depend on the circumstances in which I'm saying it. So I'll, depending on the people, how they're reacting to things, and what kind of feedback I'm getting from the audience, and what kind of a room that the story's being told in, all of these things make a difference on what seems to work the best as I tell it. So I make adjustments like that.
Now, here at the Coyote's Corner, we're here in this closet. You're by yourself in front of a microphone. Did that have an impact on you? Was that very alien compared to what you normally do?
Well, I had written it out, and I'd once had to present it to an audience as a written piece of work. But I am used to looking at this and talking and saying it at the same time. So I suppose I could get claustrophobic in a small place like this, and there's nobody to look back at you to tell you how you're doing, but it's a lot like when I practice telling it. I'm looking at the words that are on the paper that are reminding me not to skip some parts or omit some parts. And I'm not really seeing that so much, and I'm not seeing the room. I'm seeing the images in my mind that gave rise to this story.
So you see the story unfolding in your imagination while you're telling it, in that case.
Yeah, it makes it easier for the words to come out right and for the expressions to come out right.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this story with us and sharing where that story came from.
No, you're most welcome. It was my pleasure.
And John, if people want to reach out, what's the best way for them to do that?
If they write to me at John the Buddhist, Buddhist, John the Buddhist at gmail.com, then I can add them to a list of a newsletter that I send out every week that describes everything that's happening in storytelling in New Hampshire for that week. And if they want to talk about other things when they write to me at John the Buddhist, then we can start a conversation.
Well, thank you again, John.
You're most welcome.
That was Michael Lang sitting down with John Sanders. If you'd like to hear more from John, you can reach him at johnthebuddhist@gmail.com. To our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe so you never miss a minute of what's going on here. And until next time, this has been Coyote's Corner.